watch out for the wires. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this third in a series of podcasts and webinars live here at COP28 in Dubai with the Al-Attiyah Foundation for Sustainable Energy from Qatar. Very glad to have you joining us today from wherever you're watching in the world. My name is Naweed Jabakil and the live audience here in front of us in Dubai. One key thing that we're noticing here and around the world is the shift of economic power, but also the importance geopolitically from the West to the East and the rise of the global South in Asia, as some would call it. That's what we're going to delve into today. The traditional relationship between the Gulf or GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council, energy producers and Asia has been one of client and supplier, but that is shifting. What we're seeing is as the world moves towards sustainable energy, there's more of an emphasis on collaboration and cooperation to try and drive forward the targets towards net zero and a cleaner future for all. I'm very glad to say that we have three excellent guests to be with us today who will delve into a bit of this. So a bit of a different format. First, we'll start off with a short presentation, about 5 minutes each from each of the three panelists who are joining me, and then we'll delve into a panel as well to really go into the detail and see how much insight we can get for our audience here and wherever they're watching from around the world. So I'll just introduce the panelists quickly. We've got Dr. Tej Gida from GHD, who's on my right. Next to him is Mr. Sho Hayashi from the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. And last but by no means least, Dr. Ryosuke Shida from the Mitsubishi Research Institute. Ted, I'll start with you then, if you can take the podium and give us your opening remarks.
Thank you very much. I always like to start with a little bit about who I am and where I'm from. So I work with a company called GHD. We're a professional services firm that started in Australia, actually. We're almost 100 years old. We're all around the world, including here in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and many other parts of the world as well. But I actually come from Canada. And I come from a city in Canada called Waterloo. And I always need to ask this question. Has anyone ever heard of Waterloo, Canada? You have. And what is it famous for? You know? No? Okay. It's famous for two things. Neither of them are me. One is the University of Waterloo, a very renowned academic institution. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Waterloo, in addition to my role at GHD. And the other is the BlackBerry. If you remember BlackBerry phones with the beautiful keyboards, BlackBerry rose to fame in Waterloo, and it also descended into a terrible ending in Waterloo. So there is where I am from. Now let's see if I can get this working again. Sorry. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so I wanted to talk about hydrogen here. In my opinion, hydrogen is an interrupter in the world around renewable energy. When we used to make renewable energy, solar, wind, I'm sure you all know this, we had to use that energy where we generated it. Hydrogen allows us to export renewable energy. It's the era of exportable renewables, and that is going to change everything around the world, and we're already seeing that. Picture the old map of where fossil fuels are in the world. We know where they are. Now picture a new world where all the renewables are that can make hydrogen into the export market. It's a new map. And that is the profound nature of what hydrogen is doing to the market. So the UAE, we were fortunate enough at GHD to collaborate with the UAE on putting together a hydrogen strategy. This was just released a few weeks ago. If you go to the web, you can find the full strategy. I won't try to go through all of the details of it. It's too big. But I would like to talk to a few pieces of it and a little bit about some of the ambitions. You can see this. Targets, just in terms of jobs, 2031, 184,000 new jobs due to hydrogen here in the UAE. 500,000 jobs by 2050. You can see the production numbers By 2031, we're talking about 1.4 million tons of hydrogen produced here. By 2051, almost 15 million tons of hydrogen. So there is a real ambition in the UAE to produce hydrogen, and there's very good reasons for why hydrogen can be produced here and why this is a really great opportunity for UAE, but also for Asia. Okay, why is it favorable here? Many areas of the GCC will have similar conditions. Ample energy resources, solar radiance in this region is fantastic, which means we can generate lots of solar energy. We have the air, the space and the land to generate the solar, and we can convert that. But not only that, countries such as the UAE is well versed in exporting energy to the rest of the world. Their ability to leverage a supply chain to the rest of the world for energy is there. They understand contracts. They understand logistics. They understand markets. All of those things are well understood. Plus the workforce is strong. And if there's a good workforce, in addition to that supply chain infrastructure, plus the access to markets, then there's a really great opportunity to actually make a hydrogen market appear in this area. But we are talking about here in this session, GCC cooperation with Asia. One thing I want to talk about very specifically is right at the top there. The hydrogen strategy, when you have a chance to read it, will actually say that the UAE should prioritize the use of hydrogen produced here in the UAE, not for the export market. And primarily, where that hydrogen should go, according to the strategy, is into the hard-to-abate sectors, the areas where we really have a difficult time electrifying or using other renewables directly. So you can see some of the things on here: aviation, shipping, iron and steel is on here, fertilizers, chemicals, transport markets, all the hard-to-abate sectors. So make the hydrogen here and keep it here. That is actually the priority in the strategy. Now, one of these I want to talk about in a little bit more detail because I think it's important, is green steel. So GHD actually just released a paper on green steel and what green steel is and how it works. You can see a link at the top there. One of the things that we think is that direct reduced iron making producers such as Saudi, UAE, Algeria, and Oman are going to end up not just being exporters of hydrogen, but products of hydrogen. And I think we have to think of hydrogen that way. It's not just the molecule that can move, it's the products generated from that molecule. So iron created here, moving to other countries to help with steel, especially in other countries like Germany, where steel production is quite expensive. That is a viable commodity export market that I think we're going to see here. Now, I did say the priority in the strategy is to keep the hydrogen here, but there's also two scenarios on export market of hydrogen from the UAE to the rest of the world. And you can see the mapping on the right there. The 9.6 million tons per year is the uppercase number by 2050, and then there's a lowercase of 4.8 million tons. In either scenario, there will be export from the UAE, most likely into GCC. That is where this hydrogen is more than likely to go. It's not the dominant use of the hydrogen here, but it's an important one. For context, I talk about 9.6 million tons by 2050. The total amount of hydrogen in the world right now being used is 120 million tons. So quite a lot. The projection of green hydrogen that will be used by 2050 is another 150 million tons. So we will double the amount of hydrogen we produce. Right now, most of our hydrogen is gray. It's made from natural gas. In the future, it will start moving much more towards green. But even UAE by itself cannot produce enough of this. So many countries in the GCC need to combine their talents and their workforces to produce more of this product for the export market. And finally, part of the strategy includes a roadmap of all the considerations that we need to put together to make this work. And you can see some of them here. No, there's no surprises. We need resources. We need policy to be in alignment. We need global collaboration and partnerships, finance and investments, which is always one of the most risky positions. But there's one of these more than any other that I think will define the ability to move hydrogen from the GCC into Asia. And I think that's a development of actual hydrogen markets. My GHD colleagues hear me say this all the time, but I'm a little bit worried that I cannot go to an exchange and trade hydrogen right now. It is not a commodity. These are, individual to individual transactions. How do we create a market for hydrogen where someone can invest in the infrastructure, knowing that they'll be able to sell the hydrogen into the market? We need that market to develop in Asia if we want to supply the hydrogen into that market. And I think that's where governments really have a role. And that's probably the biggest piece of work that we need to do. All the resources here, supply chain is here, infrastructure, people are here. The demand will come eventually, but we need the offtake markets to really be really solid before this is going to be realistic. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gira. A great scene setter. Next up, we have Mr. Sho Hayashi from the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Sho Hayashi from the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. And today, so we're as area, we are focusing on supporting Asian countries' energy transition, and then so we'll like to introduce some of our activities. To start with, I'll be sharing the situation that our region is facing, and although, yes, the Asian countries are trying their best to produce as much renewables as possible, there are a lot of challenges to increase the amount of usage of renewables in Asia on the left-hand side. That could be one, it's a diverse starting points for decarbonization, meaning the Asian countries in the real situation is heavily relying on coal. And then so as we think about the coal phase out, for example, but when the energy demand is increasing rapidly, we also need to think of how to sustain that increasing energy supply. And also there's the varying natural resource availability depending on different countries, and also even within one country there's like a lot of diverse potential for natural resources. And then so if you look at Asia as a whole, there might be a good amount of renewable energy potential, but in reality already, there are a good amount of renewable electricity that are abandoned because they're not directly delivered to the demand destination. And yes, as I mentioned, the Asian economy is growing rapidly, and there are different forecasts on that. Some reports estimate the economic growth is rather mild, and then therefore we can sustain the energy demand by renewables. But if we add up the individual national projection by each government, that is easily exceed the forecast that is proposed by a lot of institutions globally. So here, the importance is that we need to look into the details of the situation of each country. And then hence, we not only have to think about sustainability, but we have to think about the affordability of the energy, also the reliability of the supply of the energy, and then also the social stability and what sort of impact that the transition will lead. And so hence, it's not like that easy to completely shift for Asia to into a green economy. So there comes in the so-called transition technology. because if we look at the estimate of the CO2 emission or greenhouse gas emission from the region, it will still increase if we don't take any action. And then there's only part of it that we can replace with the green energy. And so in the meantime, we need to transition technology that can reduce the amount of CO2 emission to achieve the Paris Agreement targets. And so AREA is supporting Asian countries through different aspects. One is this roadmap simulation on the national level. So what we do here is we use the cost minimization model and to suggest that if we try to minimize the cost of energy transition, what sort of technology would come in to reduce the CO2 emission while also sustaining the economic growth. And the important work here is that we, as an international organization set up under East Asia Summit, we do talk to each government and then reflect their forecasts on renewables and which technologies they're trying to use, and then what sort of power plants they're trying to increase. So we are combining all this information to make a realistic simulation that is not just ambitious, but also get actually implemented. So yeah, this is the strength of AREA as the international organization based in the Southeast Asia and Asian region. Also, another activity that we are doing is something called Asia Transition Finance Study Group. Yeah, as we already heard, it is important to have the multi-sector to collaborate to achieve the energy transition. And definitely the financial institutions play a key role in creating the actual projects for energy transition. And then so this study group started in 2021 by private financial institutions who are willing to contribute to energy transition in Asia, but also struggling to decide what kind of project to support on. Because there are, if you just support all sorts of technologies or projects, there's of course the concern of greenwashing and then the lock-in. So how can we sustain or avoid those concerns while confidently contributing to the emission reduction in Asia? So the study group has published the Transition Finance Guideline and also the annual report, which is suggesting a lot of information for the governments to implement. So as also mentioned before, there's the policy, or each national government will play a key role in actually making the transition happen. And then, but also the governments are not sure what sort of a scheme or support they can do to collaborate with the financial institution. So we're as a neutral research institute, we're becoming the hub of multi-sectors to come together and then propose what would be the ideal governments for that. And also, this is the last slide, but in order to supplement that sort of transition, we are creating a technology list for energy transition. Well, we listed up the potential technologies that can be used for the energy transition from the upstream energy sector to power and midstream, downstream, and then also hard to abate end use sectors. Because again, the financial institutions are not the experts in technology. And then so although they want to evaluate each project, they don't have the information, they don't have the latest information on each technology, how much emission they can reduce, how much costly it can be, and what are the forecasts. So by interviewing a lot of stakeholders, we are creating this technology list so that the financial institutions and also other stakeholders can properly evaluate the energy transition. And we started from the upstream and power sector last year, but we're over the next year, we're planning to expand it all the way to the end use in hard to update sectors. Yes, so this is what we are doing at Area, and then I will look forward to discussing with you. Thank you.
Collection of wires there. Lastly, Dr. Shida-san, it's your laptop, so hopefully it should be easier. All right.
Okay, good morning. My name is Yusuke Shida from Mitsubishi Research Institute. I'm heavily involved in the policy recommendation to the Japanese government, and I'm doing the energy transition things. And today I'd like to focus on the Japan ASEAN GCC cooperation for energy transition. As Dr. Taji already mentioned about the possibility of the hydrogen in the UAE, and Mr. Hayashi mentioned the reality in the ASEAN countries. So I'd like to connect those areas and what is going to be, what's the point to explore the, the feasible scheme for energy transition. So first of all, I'd like to touch upon the challenges for each country. There are a lot of challenges, so there's only the part of that. And the first of all, Japan, the energy sufficiency rate is quite low, only the 10% after the nuclear accident in Fukushima in 2011. And also now the Japan faces the population decrease. It means the low economic growth. So as you know, the energy transition is costs a lot. So we need to a lot of investment for energy transition. So this kind of low economic growth environment is not so good for the Japan. And the ASEAN countries, Mr. Hayashi already mentioned about that. And I hear sometimes the energy trilemma, the world energy trilemma, the energy security, equity, and the sustainability. So the ASEAN countries, some ASEAN countries heavily rely on the coal for their primary energy supply, and so the harmonizing the strategies for the transitioning to the cleaner sources while ensuring energy access for the growing population is a key challenge in the ASEAN, I think. And the GCC countries, the Gulf Coast countries in the Gulf Coast, they are known, of course, known for its oil wells, and face the challenges of the energy and the economic diversification, I think. So transitioning away from the dependence on fossil fuel revenues, and also the GCC countries try to develop new industries. These kind of things are vital for the long-term sustainability in the GCC countries. So I'd like to explain some points in each region. So the first, Japan needs a decarbonized thermal. I think this slide is summarizing the point Dr. Pazzi already mentioned about that. And the decarbonized thermal means the hydrogen and ammonia and the CCUS, such kind of things. So this graph shows the Mitsubishi Research Institute did the simulation for the electricity sector in Japan in 2050. So this simulation is also similar to the area simulation, the minimizing the total system cost. And also this simulation consider about the battery, renewable with batteries, and how it's considering the kind of the security kind of things, right? Security constraint economic dispatch, so like hourly basis, the supply demand match, and also the interconnected capacity, and the very short-term fluctuation of the renewable output. So to absorb the renewable output, so then it depends on the weather condition. So to absorb such kind of things, the decarbonized thermal is required. In our simulation, we think almost 20% or 30% of total electricity will be supplied from the kind of decarbonized thermal, like hydrogen and ammonia. So what I want to say is we need to we shouldn't rely on the one single source. We should diverse the decarbonized sources so that so like renewables and the nuclear, the decarbonized fuels, this kind of, each, they have a different characteristics, so that we need to find out the kind of the ideal portfolio of the electricity demand. And also, I'd like to go into the move on the ASEAN countries. I think this slide, Mr. Hayashi already mentioned about that. So, the energy consumption in ASEAN will be, rapidly increasing right now. And in 2050, this is simulation for this figure is from the ASEAN Center for the Energy, and almost it's 3 times larger even now. So the energy demand is now very rapidly growing. And also the most of the ASEAN countries decrease the carbon neutrality in 2050. So they have to meet the massive demand with clean and affordable energy. How to realize it is the basic kind of the crucial things in ASEAN's energy transition. The last one is GCC countries. We are now paying attention of the energy transition potential in GCC, not only in the oil and gas industry. So right today, the GCC country is a very sunny country, so they have a lot of potential for the solar PVs. And also they have a lot of the play for the CCS, so they have a lot of the oil and gas reserve, so that they can produce the kind of green hydrogen and the blue hydrogen. They have a lot of potential for that. So today I'd like to suggest the 3 countries collaboration, trilateral collaboration. So this figure shows very, the simplified figures. But the GCC countries has a lot of potential for the producing the blue and green hydrogen, so in the clean energy potential, so that they can export such kind of things. As the Dr. Taji already mentioned about that. And Japan needs a lot of hydrogen and ammonia, as I already mentioned about that. And also the ASEAN, this is also crucial for the ASEAN countries, because we see this like a hydrogen and ammonia. If we use that, we can use a lot of the existing infrastructures. So, for example, like a gas turbine, we can use the almost same gas turbine for the hydrogen conversion, just replacing some ports like kind of combustions things, so that we can use such kind of, this is the kind of the economically very how to say, effective way to use such kind of things. And also Japan has a lot of such kind of the technologies, the key technologies, so that Japan can contribute to the other countries. So this is a very initial idea of trilateral collaboration, but maybe I think that we can explore such kind of things to realize that. So there are a lot of challenges to realize these schemes, and I mentioned that I listed a lot of points to explore this to make it feasible. And I'd like to touch upon the 2 things. The first one is we need to identify the regulatory challenges, so that we think about the JCM schemes, joint credit mechanism. It is based on the bilateral schemes. So if we want to apply such kind of schemes to this trilateral collaboration, we need to find out what part can be changed in terms of the regulatory. And also the last one, the elaborate alignment with the international taxonomies. I know that there's some hydrogen ammonia is not always welcome to some parties, but we need to align such kind of the international taxonomy to realize very more just transition in Japan, ASEAN, and these countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shida, and both of the other guests as well. So we've got about half an hour now for the panel to really delve into this. I'll start with you then, Dr. Gida. Hydrogen, the so-called disruptor, as you put it, this fantastic resource with great potential, but the markets don't currently exist. If you see the other alternatives, if it's electric vehicles or things powered by other forms of energy, why is it that those markets don't exist, and how do we change that, do you think, especially given the current ecosystem that we're working with when it comes to renewable?
Yeah, I think, to your point about electric vehicles and electrification, I actually think, and this is my opinion, so I won't speak for my company, I think actually there's a damaging component to how we talk about the energy transition, where we pull on electrify everything and do it now. I don't personally believe that we're going to be able to do that anytime soon. So that creates a situation and an allowance for many other forms of energy that are potentially very compatible with our existing energy systems to come into play. I think we're going to need, yes, a lot more electrification, but we need a hydrogen market. Right now, I can go to exchanges and I can trade carbon. In the voluntary market, in the regulatory markets, I can trade carbon. I know what the price of carbon is, how many dollars per ton of CO2. A mechanism like that globally for hydrogen is what we really need. And we need production because we have very little production of actually clean hydrogen just yet. So now I guess the big question you're asking it is who's going to do that and how are we going to do that? And I wish I had that answer. I don't know how that's going to develop. I don't know who's going to take the responsibility for developing that market. I suspect the oil and gas players are going to be a big part of this equation. I think they have to be because they understand how to move this molecule. It's already, I said 120 million tons is already being used right now. So there is knowledge around hydrogen, about the technical side of it. It's the market commercial side of it that we have to solidify. I think we can look at the carbon markets as a good equivalent. If we can trade carbon, we can trade barrels of oil, we can trade a meter cubed of natural gas. Let's trade a kilogram of hydrogen. Let's figure out what that is. Let's tag on to infrastructure that we've already built. I think that's what we need to do.
But it does take time. I mean, if you look at carbon markets, it has been quite a long time. This COP28 here in Dubai, they're looking at Article 6 and 6.4 in particular, but these are slow processes, don't they? They do take some time, but it's a really important point that perhaps the amount being invested in by some of the major oil producers suggests that there is only one trajectory here, and it may come. Mr. Hayashi, I wanted to come to you next because that one thing that stuck out from your presentation was the idea of the different economic development stages that we see across Asia.
Yes.
It's not this homogenous area. Indeed, the GCC is quite similar in that sense. Again, at this COP28, and in the last few years, we've heard a lot from countries about their right to develop, about the hypocrisy of Western industrialized nations, largely Western, telling them that they need to clean up their act. How do you translate that message better to say that wherever you are in your development stage, we need to all do this together?
This is a very tricky question. I need to be careful how to phrase things, but I think it's as simple as that. There's no one size fits all solution, and yes, it's important to have an ambitious goal, but in Japanese, we have a saying called a rice cake in the picture, which means an ideal which is never get implemented. And then if we keep having that too ambitious goals and then just sticking to that and excluding all the other solutions, I think we all get into a very fragile economy. And also, so the point on electrification and hydrogen is also that I think the diversification is the key, because all of those systems are new and then will be built from now on. And then yes, if we all rely on one thing, yes, I think we can learn from the history that it would not end well. So in many ways, so in order to have a sustainable and reliable supply of energy, and and also so what actually happened was, for example, sorry, I'm just going to another point, but when the gas price surged 2 years ago, a lot of the Asian countries had to reoperate the coal power plants that they were trying to reduce. And it's a global phenomenon. It's not the only Asian problems, but it is linked with other problems in different parts of the world. And so, and if we don't invest enough in reduction emission from those coal power plant, for example, we end up just keep having the unabated fossil fuel, which is not the situation we want to have. So yeah, I think the key is the diversifying and then, break it down and ideate what that goal means to each economy. Yeah. So
to make sure that it's practical when it comes to the
Yes,
implementation as well. But the encouraging thing, I guess, Dr. Shida, is that the countries you listed there from ASEAN, most of them have set net zero targets or carbon neutral targets. You spoke about the importance of trilateral collaboration between Japan, this region, and ASEAN. Are there any other examples of where that's happened and it's been successful that we can learn from, perhaps?
So that you mean that like as an example of the trilateral collaboration? Okay, I think there are some similarity of the the joint procurement of the gas like LNG plants, because some company needs some energy and but to to procure the the energy from the one single country is very risky. So in terms of the from the perspective of the risk diversification, some countries jointly procure something. So I think the hydrogen is and the green energy, I think that we can adapt the same scheme so that it is not limited to the ASEAN and GCC countries. The countries that requires hydrogen and such kind of fuels, there are a lot of the countries that also outside of this region. So that so this scheme can be developed the other regions as well.
And Dr. Gita, one thing that also resonated was the idea of how lucrative this could be in terms of job creation, which is a key focus, not just for governments in this part of the world as they look to diversify, but all across Asia as well. I just wondered, when you forecast 500,000 jobs by 2050 or 185,000 nearly in the UAE alone, what impact will technology have on those sorts of jobs? And will they be jobs run by humans at that stage?
I hope so. I would like to think so, but I mean, it's a very good question. I'm not an expert on AI, and I'm not an expert on generative AI, but I must say, I think it's a tool that we have to use. I heard Sam Altman talk, the chairman of CEO, the president of OpenAI, a few weeks ago, and he had a really interesting comment. This is before he was fired and rehired, by the way. His comment was, I don't think humans will not lose jobs to AI. Humans who know how to use AI will keep jobs over people who do not know how to use AI. And I thought that was profound. So do we take on that technology? Quite frankly, we need to move technology quicker. We need to move infrastructure quicker. So can techniques like AI and generative AI specifically help us move faster? I think that's how the workforce will develop. But to your other point too, I think there's a bigger problem. We talk about 500,000 jobs here, and I think the workforce in UAE is quite well suited to understanding the energy sector and can make that transition. As an engineering firm or professional services firm, I'm actually quite worried about talent and supply of talent into these new areas and this new infrastructure. We have a hard time finding all the people that we need to actually engage in the energy transition. So there's a big gap there. How do we reskill oil and gas? How do we teach people coming out of the university setting, graduates, what the skills are that we really need in this work that's going to last for decades? I think we really have to pay attention to that. So I'm quite worried about the workforce labor side.
And you're an adjunct professor at the University of Waterloo. Are you seeing that being considered at institutions like yours? Is it something that universities are thinking about enough, that we need to change how we're teaching people about these jobs of the future when it comes to the energy transition?
Do you want the polite answer or the
diplomatic answer, perhaps?
So, I mean, I didn't study at the University of Waterloo, but it's a wonderful university. It's a high-tech university, kind of famous in the world, actually. And I'm on the Dean's Advisory Council for Engineering there to help them consider how they're going to alter their programs to deal with climate change, energy transition. And I would say, as most academic institutions, a lot of inertia. It's very slow. They're moving very slow on this to actually do this. And that's just the nature, I think, of academia. So my personal role is to help transition that a little bit faster. A lot more work needs to be done there.
Yeah. And it must be said, it's not just the world of academia, but lots of industries, all sorts of sectors are grappling with how they try and position themselves with these new technologies. But technology is something I wanted to stay with Mr. Hayashi, because when people think of a country like Japan, the first thing that pops into their head is technology, especially when you think about the brands that have come out of there, whether it's Panasonic, Mitsubishi, lots of others. What are the key challenges, do you think, when it comes to technology transfer between these two regions, GCC and Asia, and what can governments do to try and collaborate more?
Right. So a lot of the technologies are already there theoretically. So it is the actual projects that will make it available to the market. And one of the challenges that the government has is that there are a lot of feasibility studies. So they can prove that those technologies would work, but it's not necessarily commercially viable. And there's a huge gap between the existing technology, or what's theoretically possible, and then what's actually implementable on the ground. And so that's where also I believe the key role of finance comes in. The private financial institutions alone cannot take all the risks for the newer technologies, and then so it is like the collaboration between the public and private sectors. Well, so-called blended finance. It's becoming a buzzword in a way, but well, the key is that the public sector also takes the role in supporting with the private sector on so that we can fly all those emerging technologies.
And Dr. Chida, when it comes to collaboration between the two regions, what areas do you think particularly? I mean, we've heard about the commercial trading relationship, but where else do you think there's real opportunity here for the two regions to work together?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of the possibilities, and also there are a lot of the approaches. But I think one of the possibilities are Indonesia. It's a lot of they are now growing countries, and also there are a lot of the factory in Japan. Japanese company. So the Japanese company also now face the supply chain, the CO2 reduction that we call this Scope 3 reduction. So they have a responsibility for the CO2 emission from their supply chain. So there are a lot of the factories in the like the automobiles and the kind of the manufacturing factory in Indonesia. So kind of decarbonization needs is there. So so I think the English is one of the point.
And Dr. Gida, just to come to one issue that you touched upon, you said policy will be one key determinant of whether this relationship really flourishes. What's your assessment of the policy making at the moment and the importance of those political ties? Because we've seen in recent years, if you take countries like China or Japan, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, all of these countries are strengthening their ties and trying to diversify their relationship away from how I started this conversation of we're selling this resource, we're buying this resource, but that's changing now at the moment. And perhaps there's some opportunity there as far as closer collaboration on policy is concerned.
Yeah, I'm not a policy expert by any means, but, I think policy and government intervention is incredibly important to this entire discussion. I think if only to bring greater confidence to the investment sector to actually put money into projects. I think you said it well. We're not seeing the projects move quickly. We do have technologies available that do work, but there are other risk factors preventing the capital flows into the technologies to create the projects as quickly as we need. And I think governments have a place to play in that, in bringing that confidence and creating policies that go beyond the typical election cycle. I mean, this is a long-term issue for us, and I think we need governments and policymakers to really look at it from a long-term standpoint. I'm from Canada, as I said, and I have to point to the United States. If we really project out hydrogen, for instance, I think the United States may end up being the cheapest place in the world to make hydrogen and may end up being a big exporter due to the Inflation Reduction Act. A profound piece of policy that they've put in. Hopefully it will last beyond the next election cycle, which is next year. We'll see what happens. But that has really shifted the economics of the world, and it's shifted investment from the other parts of the world, in many cases, to US soil to make hydrogen that will then be exported. So how is the GCC thinking about equilibrating with the IRA? I think that's a very important question. How are Asian countries thinking about equilibrating it? I think of it as a policy race now. How do we all level up to that same standard so that we can create competitive economic conditions for the production of low carbon fuels?
And a lot of the attention so far, particularly with the IRA, has come between the EU, the European Union, and its response to the IRA. But countries here certainly thinking about it. You outlined the UAE. How does this balance between domestic demand and need and calibrating that, if you will, with export potential? Is it a sense that they're thinking about once we meet local demand, then we export, or what's the strategic thinking behind it, do you think?
I think the easiest way to explain that is as simple as it makes sense because you have your own internal demand and you can satisfy the demand, that the export market is still notional. Where is this hydrogen going to go? What are the logistics and the cost price of moving the product compared to retaining it in country where you have an inbuilt demand? So I think it's actually a very pragmatic solution. Let's use it locally. It's lower cost if we keep it here. Maybe we get to $1 a kilogram hydrogen here, $2 a kilogram hydrogen here, which is the goal. And let's wait for the market stuff to develop to explore export. That can be tagged on later. That's really the heart of the strategy.
Yep, and potentially it will help with the net zero targets as well. And one thing from your chart, Mr. Hayashi, was the last one, 2050, there would still be a significant reliance on fossil fuels down at the bottom.
Right.
We saw nuclear rise a bit, but coal, natural gas still very much there.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of countries do you think are going to be struggling with grappling with that? And what can we do collectively as a region to try and bring down that reliance on fossil fuel?
That's a challenging question, but I would say like countries like Philippines are really struggling, or like or they would need a lot of the unabated fossil fuel according to their strategy at the point. Vietnam, Indonesia, they're being really aspirational in increasing the amount of renewables, but also even under their strategy, there will be like a good amount of fossil fuel that is expected to remain. So if I would say the ASEAN countries, I mean, most of them have the fossil fuel or thermal power plant in their strategy, and so to some extent will struggle. Yeah.
Yep, and Dr. Shida, when it comes to the work that the Mitsubishi Research Institute is doing here in the UAE, at least, and in the region, as I touched on earlier, it's not really homogeneous. Certain countries have different needs and different desires when it comes to how they diversify. Aside from hydrogen that we've heard about, what other forms of clean energy do you see really being ramped up here? I mean, we've seen Saudi do a lot when it comes to solar, for example. Here in Dubai, we've got one of the world's largest solar parks. What other forms of clean energy do you think are really set to take off in this region, which could benefit East Asia as well?
Oh, well, so you mean that your question is about the other than the solar PVs and the CCUS, what kind? Oh, well, yes, the very simple way is that LNG, the gas, natural gas is the transition fuel. We think that the transition fuel, so the going from the high carbon intensity fuels to the from the coal to the gas is also one of the very practical solutions. So the starting at this point is also the effective way, and then going to the more greener the fuels like the hydrogen, the ammonia. This kind of the step is a very realistic way. And the GCC country has a lot important role for this.
And Dr. Gida, to come back on some of the issues that you raised around hydrogen, green hydrogen, most of it gray at the moment. We hear blue hydrogen as well, lots of different colors. What do you think is key to try and unlock that move towards green hydrogen and ensuring that this is a better thing for the planet before we start exporting it in droves?
I think we should abandon the rainbow of hydrogen. You know, I really do. I think it's confusing.
Every time I do something on hydrogen, I hear a different color thrown into the mix. So yeah, rainbow's the right word.
There's pink now, there's white hydrogen, there's all these different products. I think it's too confusing, and we're putting all these different carbon intensities on each of these products, and they're all done inconsistently around the world. they're low carbon fuels. If they're low carbon fuels, let's acknowledge them as that. I think that's actually one of the key things to helping with that side of it. I do want to sort of touch on one of the other renewables that I think is really important in this region. And this is my personal area of engineering expertise, but I think biofuels and renewable natural gas, because we've talked about natural gas, and it is a transition fuel. And if countries like Philippines, they don't have a 2050 net zero goal, right? They don't have one. You saw it on I think you showed it, Dr. Shida. They don't have one. So they're moving now from coal to natural gas. But I think we have to acknowledge that natural gas is still a fossil fuel as well. And I know that every net zero pathway 2050, all of them still have fossil fuels. Net zero 2050 is not the end of fossil fuels. It's a transition pathway to some future year that has no fossil fuel, but we'll still have it. And then hopefully it's more natural gas and coal. But how do we phase out natural gas? So biofuels, even food waste, when we think of all the food waste that we produce, that can be used to produce renewable natural gas that looks exactly like natural gas and can move into that same piping distribution system into vehicles for compressed natural gas. It's a really good opportunity and also takes material away from landfills. Or even, I would say, blending hydrogen into the natural gas network. We are doing a lot of study on that. We have all this pipe infrastructure in the ground already built. Can we start replacing natural gas by blending hydrogen into it, taking care of safety, because safety will be important. But that's a really great way to move the energy that we can create in places like UAE.
And Mr. Hayashi, I'll finish with you then. One final question. Finance. None of this matters really unless we can try and get financial institutions, banks and the like to move more money into these sorts of technologies. And again, when you look at the Dubai International Financial Center, for example, or countries like Riyadh or Qatar or the Doha Financial Center, you see Chinese banks there, you see Japanese banks there, you see Korean financial institutions. What's the key, do you think, to try and increase finance when it comes to these technologies?
What do you mean? Like, so you mean increase in finance in energy transition projects in general?
That's right. Particularly between the Gulf and East Asia.
Oh, between Gulf and East Asia. Well, so I think the East Asia or Southeast Asia is a great market, as Dr. Shida mentioned. In reality, there are already a lot of Middle Eastern capital flowing into the energy-related projects in Southeast Asia. And so they are already playing an important role here. And the key to increase that is, again, I think it's the policy coordination to make sure to de-risk and to make it comfortable for the financial players to invest in those projects. And incentivization through different policy schemes would be crucial. Like in Vietnam, they increase the amount of wind power by having a great incentivizing scheme, including not just the Vietnamese capital, but they succeeded in having a lot of foreign direct investments in wind. And so yes, through policy coordination, that could be possible, I believe.
And I guess the Asia Transition Finance Study Group that you highlighted is an example of that. And I noticed Australia was in there as well.
Oh, yes.
It's really all-encompassing when it comes to that region.
Yes.
Specifically, given the geopolitical tensions, the importance of APAC moving forward with the US-China tensions. Yes. It's important to have that collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. You raised a good, thank you. You raised a great point that, on the 2nd of December, we had the signing event in front of our Prime Minister, that the first Abu Dhabi bank was the first financial institution to show interest in joining the Asia Transition Finance Study Group. So I hope this will be the start of further collaboration in terms of the finance as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a major player here, based in Abu Dhabi, along with Qatar National Bank, the largest lenders in the Middle East and North Africa region. But we'll have to leave it there. We're out of time. But thank you very much for this fascinating conversation and for being here and watching from wherever you are in the world. Plenty of ground covered here. We started with hydrogen and the importance of that, particularly for the United Arab Emirates and other countries in this region. We spoke about policy. We heard more about what's happening in ASEAN nations as well as East Asia, the sorts of collaboration. And of course, looking at Japan, as Dr. Shida-san highlighted, that importance of the trilateral collaboration when it comes to not just ASEAN, but individual countries, bilateral relationships like Japan and this one and others in the Gulf region as well. So thank you once again to all of my panelists, Dr. Tej Gida from GHD, Dr. Ryusuke Shida-san from the Mitsubishi Research Institute, and Mr. Sho Hayashi from the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Of course, our series of panels here from COP28 in Dubai will continue, so please do join us for the next one in a few days' time. My name is Noriji Barkil. Thank you for watching, and again, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much.